Imagine. It's 2:45 a.m. Shah Rukh Khan, one of the world's most famous actors, feels like he's not alone in his house. He sees the portrait on the wall smiling, but he's not smiling himself. A rustling voice is heard behind him. Tonight is your last role. The Mumbai night was unusually quiet. The constant hum of the city seemed to have been silenced by an invisible hand. Raindrops beat against the windows, casting dark shadows in the light of the street lamps. That evening, Shah Rukh Khan, one of India's most famous actors, was alone in his mansion. At least, that's what he thought. The ticking of the clock on the wall had grown strangely louder. It seemed that every second echoed not only in the room, but also in his mind. He glanced at the old script on the table. He had left this script a few days ago, delivered by an unknown courier. It had only one sentence written on it. This role will be your last role. At first, he thought it was just a strange joke from a fan. But as soon as he started reading the script, everything changed, because the events in it gradually began to unfold in his own life. In the previous days, only small details had caught his attention. The sound of a door opening by itself, the sound of footsteps inside the house, the sight of a shadow moving behind him in the mirror. He tried to explain it away as just fatigue. But from the second night on, nightmares had already invaded his life. In his dream, he found himself in an empty movie theater. A film from his youth was being shown on the screen. But the scenes were constantly changing. Suddenly, the movie went completely dark, and his face appeared in the middle of the screen. But there were no eyes, just a black void. Then a voice was heard. "Don't forget your role." He woke up screaming. But the thing was, the voice wasn't just stuck in his dream. It was still echoing in the room. A shadow stood in the corner of the wall. It looked like a human figure. It was motionless and silent. He hurriedly turned on the light. But there was nothing in the room. The next day, he read the script again carefully. The text was about a world-famous actor, a star who began to be haunted by the character he played in his last film. An interesting scene was described in the middle of the script. The actor is alone in his house at night. He looks at his own portrait hanging on the wall. The face in the portrait slowly begins to smile. Shah Rukh looked up. His own portrait was hanging on the wall. The face in the portrait was smiling, but he himself was not smiling. That night, the electricity in the house suddenly went out. The entire mansion was enveloped in a deep darkness. The generator was supposed to start automatically, but it did not. At that moment, footsteps were heard in the darkness. Creaking sounds were heard from the wooden floor with slow and heavy movements. His heart began to beat rapidly. He turned on the light on his phone, but found that the hallway was completely empty. Suddenly, he felt warm and moist breath behind him. A voice approaching his ear whispered softly, "You forgot your line." He turned around. There was no one around, but something was noticeable on the phone screen. In front of the camera, behind him, stood a man. His face was black as a burn, his eyes a white void. He immediately ran away. As he entered the kitchen, the door suddenly slammed shut. The lock turned on its own, and he tried to open the door, but it didn't work. Suddenly, a voice came from behind. "The actor is running away, but the film has already started." The phrase was part of his script. He turned slowly, looking around. In the corner stood that strange being. This time everything was clearer. It looked like him, but like a rotten version of himself. Its skin was torn, its eyes filled with deep darkness. Blood was dripping from its teeth. The being tilted its head to the side and finally said, "We are the same person." Shah Rukh took a step back. He hit the table, his breath caught. He kept telling himself that this wasn't real, this wasn't possible. At that moment, the being laughed with a strange, metallic sound. The only real fear. After saying this, the being disappeared in an instant. Shah Rukh was left alone in the room. But a new page had appeared on the table. A page in the script that had not existed before appeared before him. It was written there. The actor understands that the character is not just a role. It is a living being born of the actor's fears. The more famous the character becomes, the stronger it becomes. His hands began to tremble, because at the bottom of the page were these words, "The final scene will be shot tonight." It was 2:45 in the morning. They say that this time is called the Hour of the Dead. The house suddenly filled with strange sounds, applause, the applause of thousands of people, as if it were a huge stadium. But there was no one into the house. The walls were shaking. There was a strange turbulence in the air. Suddenly a pure and bright white light, like a spotlight, filled the entire room. He squinted and looked closely. A whole studio was set up in front of him for filming. Cameras, lighting equipment, and microphones. In the middle, in the director's chair, sat the same being. His name was written on the chair. The being solemnly clapped his hands and announced in a cold tone, "The shooting begins." Suddenly the surroundings changed completely. He found himself in another place, an old forgotten theater. The ceiling was cracked and crumbling. The seats were broken and there was silence everywhere. In the middle of the dusty stage was a coffin. A being stood on the stage. He said, "The last scene has begun. The actor dies, but the characters live on." Shah Rukh retreated in horror. "No, that's impossible. No." The being slowly moved towards him. "Every role you play takes a piece of your soul. You have played hundreds of roles." He came a little closer and whispered, "Now it's my turn." Suddenly memories overcame him. Movies, scenes, tears, screams, moments of death came to life one after another in his mind. He felt the emotions of each character he played again, living their pain within himself, as if they were all screaming together inside. The being said quietly, "I am all of them." The lights of the theater suddenly went out. Complete darkness. Suddenly he felt hands from behind. Countless hands, cold, smelling rotten. They were holding him, they were pulling him towards the coffin. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. Finally, the being opened the lid of the coffin. Inside, he lay down, like a corpse, pale and colorless. He stared blankly with open eyes. The being judged by his conscience. "Make your choice. Either you will remain an actor, or you will become a character." At that moment, he understood the essence of the situation. Fear gave him strength. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Then he whispered in a quiet voice, "I am completing the role." The being remained motionless for a moment. "This is impossible." Opening his eyes, he continued, "Because I'm an actor and you are just a story." The foundation of the theater shook. Cracks appeared in the walls. Everything inside began to crush and scream. His body disintegrated into particles, blown into the sky like black smoke. He was heard for the last time. Stories have no end. Shah Rukh opened his eyes. He was in his bedroom. It was already morning and sunlight was filtering in through the window. Everything seemed ordinary, and this gave him some peace. He took a deep breath. But then his gaze strayed to the script next to his bed. On it was a new sentence: to be continued. A whisper was heard from behind. "Are you ready?" He slowly turned around. In the mirror behind him stood a shadow. And this time, the shadow was smiling.